It takes time to do a podcast, it takes time to build an audience, and it takes time to actually have some authority in this space. So for those of you that are looking to get into podcasting, you should get in now because you can actually drive ads and actually grow your business exponentially doing something like this. But I'll tell you how to get there. So here's what actually happened. It's not all sunshine and flowers at the end of the day, because you can see the first year I was spending about 6 hours a week interviewing people. I was doing the editing, I was writing the show notes, plus I was trying to run Single Grain at the same time, and it was really difficult. And at the end of 1 year, my fruits of labor, I was getting 9 downloads a day. Okay, that's after 1 year. 6 hours a week, 9 downloads a day. So the question I get from people is like, why don't you just throw in the towel? Like, how did you know to keep on going? And the reality is that, well, even though the odds weren't in my favor, it's because of the unsolicited responses. So whenever you're doing content marketing, we're talking it's a 6 to 18 month journey, you have to understand that it takes time. Anything good takes time, and most people throw in the towel too early. They just give up. They can't go through the pain, right? So as long as you're getting unsolicited responses from people tweeting at you, I got emails from people saying, I don't know why this isn't more popular, this is good. For marketing school, Neil and I get people telling us, hey, I had no college degree and, I just found my first job, thank you. Or we had 0 in revenue and we just closed a $200,000 deal. It's like, you're doing the right thing. So you just keep on going. So, 9 downloads a day, and it was only 3 years into it where it really started to take off. And yeah, we were trying different things. But I think if I were to give you any tip at all, if there's only one from this talk, it's just consistency, right? It's not even just podcasting. It's not just content marketing. It's your business. It's your life, right? Even in a relationship, just consistency, right? You just keep on going. So consistency is the first thing. And it doesn't mean you can suck, though. So tip number 2 is quality, right? What does that even mean? So for those of you that listen to podcasts, you probably listen to, you might have a top 2 or 3. But what's the reason that you actually listen to them, right? Think about that for a second. For me, it's because I'm looking for the same consistent quality. So for me, I listen to the Tim Ferriss show. Why? Because he keeps interviewing people that are really hard to reach, right? You get Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example. That's really hard to access, right? Or for me, there's also another one called We Study Billionaires, which is a investing podcast where I just learn. I really don't know much about value investing, or you talk about expense ratios, things like that, all this kind of stuff. Well, We Study Billionaires. They review books. They're really consistent. They bring on guests that I probably never hear from. And then the Smart Passive Income Show from Pat Flynn. And then don't forget about ours. But I listen to these consistently because they deliver consistent quality, right? It's like watching the same TV show over and over. As a matter of fact, when I go to the gym now, I just listen to podcasts because I feel like I feel guilty if I'm not learning when I'm going to the gym. So we talked about why they're so good, but the third thing is learning from the best. So if you guys are looking to start out with podcasting, all you need to do is just go to these 2 tutorials. You can Google these. Pat Flynn podcast tutorial. He's got a bunch of videos about the equipment that you should be using. He talks about what hosting you should be using as well, how much you're looking to spend. And then also John Lee Dumas, he talks about the same things. He talks about how to get your first guests. And John Lee Dumas even has a course that you can pay for if you're looking to get into a community where people are trying to start their podcast. And the great thing about that community is every Friday they do something called Pay It Forward Fridays. And this is where you talk to people. People are sharing their podcast, and everyone's rating and reviewing each other, because rate, reviews, and subscribes actually matter, at least through iTunes. So you want to have a community where you guys can push each other up. So in Instagram right now, these are called pods. And it's a method of people trying to game Instagram right now, and it is working right now. This is a similar thing. It's kind of the wild, wild west right now when it comes to reviews, ratings, and subscribes. But you need these to move up, right? And here's another stat for you. 90% of podcasts, of the downloads, actually only go to the top 50 for each category. So you have to figure out how you can push into there, right? And I'll tell you a couple ways to promote in a second. So tip number 4 is to put your own unique spin on it. So what does that mean, right? So if you look at marketing school, it's really hard to get a daily marketing podcast. It's really hard to have a topic for every single day. But also at the same time, to be able to get 2 marketers that have differing opinions. So Neil and I, we disagree on things, and sometimes we agree on things. But he's traveling, I'm traveling. He's busy, I get busy. So it's like how do you make that happen? That's our unique spin on it, right? So think about it. How can you make a unique spin on what you're doing? I will say that if you're doing daily and you're looking to run advertising on podcasts, you're going to do better because obviously, you're selling on a CPM basis, which is anywhere from $20 to $100. So just keep that in mind. Tip number 5 is to promote. So this goes without saying. I think a lot of people know that they need to be promoting, but not a lot of people actually follow through on it. So ways to promote. The easiest way is to interview guests that have a certain social following. So when I first started Growth Everywhere, I was like, I need to reach out to people that have 5,000 Twitter followers. They need to be doing over $2 million a year in revenue or raise $2 million. But you need to set criteria first and then interview these people, and then you can have people share on social media. And that's the second thing, sharing on social media. The great thing is if you're interviewing people, at the end of the day, their stories are evergreen. They're not going to change, right? So you can easily just go to a tool called Meet Edgar. So that's meetedgar.com, and it's a little octopus. But it allows you to share things on social media in perpetuity. So you can set up a schedule, and it'll just keep sharing things over and over and over. You pay $50 a month, and you don't have to worry about it. You just schedule it in there. If you've got evergreen content like an interview podcast, you should be doing that, right? Facebook, Twitter, it'll do LinkedIn as well. Not sure what else it does, but that should be enough. And don't be afraid to hit your email list too. Especially if you're starting out, you have 10, 20, 30, 40, even like 1,000 followers or so on your email list. You should be hitting them up because these are your fans, right? You can set up a simple, blog to RSS feed for inside your email provider, and you'll be hitting people up, every single week, or it could be every single day. Probably not every single day because you don't want to annoy them. Use paid advertising too, and I'll share what Russell Brunson does, who's a really good marketer. I'll share what he does around his tool, ClickFunnels. And then also, for hosting, I talked about using Libsyn. Use Libsyn because it's going to allow you to cross-post to YouTube, to SoundCloud at the same time, to LinkedIn, to Facebook. All these things, you can hit them all at once, right? So use Libsyn. And I haven't really done anything with our YouTube channel, but we've gotten to 3,000 subscribers just because it keeps auto-posting, right? And I know that once we hit 10,000 subscribers or so, it's going to blow up, right? Like once you start to hit a certain number, I have a friend that got to 10,000, and she got to 100,000 really quickly after that. So just keep in mind, like if you just keep going, you're going to hit a certain point where everything just explodes, and that's where they call people are like, oh, it's hockey stick growth. What? Hockey stick growth takes time. Almost died there. So yeah, the other thing is SoundCloud too. It's slowly growing, but just make sure you're hitting all these other channels because it makes sense. People are listening to stuff on SoundCloud. Tip number 6 is always try to get more ratings, reviews, and subscribes. So that's easy to say, but harder to do. I recommend that if you have an intro and an outro, especially in the outro, you should be asking for ratings, reviews, and subscribes. You need to have at least one kind of call to action for the time that you're putting in. The least you can do is get a review, rating, and subscribe. And then tip number 7 is to put your own unique spin on it. So we talked about earlier, like, what separates, people, right? So you have to put your unique spin on it, but this is what Russell Brunson did right here from ClickFunnels. This right here is an MP3 player. He has, over 300 episodes. He's probably over 400 now of just marketing in your car, where he just talks in his car, nerds out on marketing for 5 to 10 minutes a day. He's got over, 300 to 400 episodes, and he just puts it all in this MP3 player. So what he does here is that he drives paid traffic to it. So from Facebook, he'll drive traffic here, and he's just giving away these MP3 players. All you need to do is pay for shipping. So if you guys want more marketing stuff to nerd out on, you can easily find this on Facebook somewhere, or just Google, marketing in your car MP3 player. You pay $9 for shipping, and then he has a bunch of upsells afterwards. So what he's doing right now, he's trying to drive more downloads, okay? So, or more subscribes, I should say. So what he's doing is that he is basically, he'll run ads, and then for each person that buys, 4 or 5 people will end up subscribing to his podcast. But the beautiful thing is, he's actually profitable with this funnel. With advertising, you're mainly just looking to drive people to a break-even funnel. But he'll spend $15 for an acquisition on an MP3 player, and at the end of the day, he'll make $32 on that. And that's just on the front end. So he sells stuff, for $25,000 mastermind, $5,000 this, $2,000 that. So if he's profitable on the front end, my God, it's all gravy at the end. Plus he gets 4 or 5 subscribers. This is something everyone should be doing, and this is something Neil and I are working on right now because we know we have an advantage. I can actually do this twice, right? So if you have a podcast, you're able to do things like this, and you have a moat that's pretty hard for people to cross, because like it takes time to do a podcast, it takes time to build an audience, and it takes time to actually have some authority in the space. So for those of you that are looking to get into podcasting, you should get in now, because you can actually drive ads and actually grow your business exponentially doing something like this. And I remember Russell saying on one of his podcasts that podcasting is one of the most important things that he's done in the last couple of years. So that's something to take a look at.